I'm about to tell you everything that you need to know about the Sisters of Battle. To keep up to date with everything at Knights at the Game Table, all you have to do is click subscribe and then hit that tiny little notification button next to it, so every time we upload a new video, YouTube will be sure to let you know. Now, the Sisters of Battle are sometimes known as the Adeptus Sororitas, or the Sisterhood, or the Daughters of the Emperor, and they function as an all-female division of the religious organization within the Imperium known as the Ministorum. And although the terms Adeptus Sororitas and Sisters of Battle are commonly assumed to mean the same thing, actually the Sisters of Battle only refers to the Orders Militant, which is the military arm of the organization, which is the best known part because of course that's where all the cool miniatures are that we get to play with. Now, the Sisterhood is the Ministorum's only official military force because there was a rule that the Ministorum couldn't maintain any quote-unquote men under arms. The idea was to limit the power of the Ministorum itself. However, they were capable of circumventing and getting around this rule by having an all-female force, which of course is the Sisterhood. There is some natural overlap between the Sisters of Battle or the Sisterhood and the Inquisition. And so even though they are completely separate organizations, typically when an Inquisitor is looking for help, they often go straight to the Adeptus Sororitas. So they were founded around the 36th millennium, and they can trace their origins to the world of San Lior, where an order known as the Daughters of the Emperor, which was an all-female cult dedicated to the worship of the Emperor, was discovered by members of the Ministorum. And George Van Dyer, I think I've said that right, the High Lord of the Administratum at the time, decided to visit San Lior and recruit the daughters into his own private army. Initially, they refused, but he showed them that he was blessed by the Emperor, and he instructed a soldier to shoot him, which the soldier had a little bit of a hesitation, but eventually did. And then thanks to the protective field generated by the Rosarius of the Ministorum, which we all know is a 5-up invulnerable save, he was not harmed. The daughters took this to be a sign, swore allegiance to him on the spot, were renamed the Brides of the Emperor, and they became his most loyal followers. So the next thing that happened is there was a siege of the ecclesiarchal palace where the custodes, the praetorians of the emperor himself, the guys in the great gold armor, tried to approach the brides and convince them of Van Dyer's treachery. And in a last-ditch effort to convince them, the custodes took Alicia Dominica, the leader of the brides, and her chosen bodyguards deep into the imperial palace, where they got to stand before the emperor himself. And what happens there remains unknown. No one really knows that. They were sworn to secrecy, but it did become clear that the brides, who reverted to the title of Daughters of the Emperor, were awakened to the evil that Van Dyer represented, and marching into his audience chamber, Dominica paused only to condemn Van Dyer for his crimes before she beheaded him, and reportedly his final words were, "I don't have time to die, I'm too busy." After this episode, the newly appointed ecclesiarch Sebastian Thor proclaimed the decree passive, which forbade the Ministorum from having any men under arms. Under the literal interpretation of the decree, the Adeptus Sororitas, being all female, were not obliged to disband, because Sebastian Thor recognized the need for the Ministorum to have some kind of force and an internal regulator, and so he allowed them to remain even if the spirit of the decree was blatantly disregarded. So the Adeptus Sororitas is divided into two covenants. There's the Covenant Prioris, which is on Terra, and the Covenant Sanctorum, which is on Ophelia 7, although the reality is there are Sisters of Battle absolutely everywhere. The overall commander of the Sisters of Battle is the Abbess of the Adeptus Sororitas, although at this time the position is currently unoccupied, I believe. As the leader of the Adeptus Sororitas, the Abbess is sometimes elected into the High Lords of Terra, which is an incredibly high and noble title. And then under the Abbess are the Prioresses of the two covenants, who are each in charge of the covenant and of the various orders. The covenants of the Sisterhood, as I just mentioned, have different orders, and each has different roles and responsibilities. There are 4 distinct classes of major order and a number of minor orders. The major orders are the Orders Militant, the Sisters of Battle, which is the military arm of the Adeptus Sororitas, the Orders Hospitaller, who are the surgeons, physicians, and nurses,
the Order Dialogus, who are the scholars who deal with languages and translation, and the Orders Famulus, who are the diplomats, chamberlains, and advisors for the imperial noble families. And it is not uncommon for a sister to transfer from one of the orders to another, especially if they've become injured or they're getting a little bit too old for combat. And then each of the major orders follows a hierarchical structure. They're led by a canoness, who is known as the Canoness Superior, who runs the entire order. And then there is a preceptory, which is a subsidiary convent or a big tactical detachment that has about 1,000 sisters, led by a Canoness Preceptor. The commandery is next, which is a smaller covenant or detachment with about 200 sisters, led by a Canoness commander. And then a mission, which is the smallest organization of sisters, only has a few units that are led by a Canoness or a Palatine, not to be confused with a Palpatine, which is something completely different. So there are a number of lesser orders, which I'm going to go through now. There's a bunch of different names. We've got the Order of the Crimson Oath, of the Fiery Tear, of the White Rose, the Order of the Bleeding Heart, the Order of the Wounded Heart, and of course we can expect a bunch of these to appear in the upcoming Adeptus Sororitas Beta Codex, which you're going to find in Chapter Approved, which is going to release sometime just before Christmas. Essentially, the Sisters of Battle function in the game as a little bit like a cross between your Astra Militarum and your Space Marines. They've got power armor, which gives them the 3-up save, and they almost all have a 6-up invulnerable save thanks to their special rule that enables them to, it's like the shield of faith that protects them because of their belief in the Emperor. But they've still got a strength and a toughness of 3, which means that effectively in combat they function kind of like a regular soldier that you'd find in the Astra Militarum. The bigger benefit though is that their guns tend to be a lot more like Space Marine guns, so they do actually tend to pack a pretty big punch. Functionally, when you're playing with them in the game, they tend to function a little bit like a glass cannon. They can hit really, really hard, but they do need to be somewhat close. A lot of their firepower tends to be close-range weaponry, and they can't really take a hit that well, especially if they're dealing with somebody who's capable of reducing your armor. So that's about everything that you really need to know about the Adeptus Sororitas. They're a really fun army to play. Up to now, they're mostly more of a fluffy army. They don't tend to be super competitive, but they do make great allies. And one of the main reasons for this is their special rule, the Acts of Faith, triggers on a 2-up and only affects a single unit in the army, which means that a smaller army benefits as a higher percentage of your army gains this benefit. So they work really well as an ally for other armies right now, but we're hoping that when the new codex comes out that they will actually be boosted. I hope this helps shed some light into a little bit more about the wonderful Sisters of Battle and the Adeptus Sororitas, and I hope we can inspire some more people to pick them up and play with them. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you've not watched our stuff before, and check out some of our battle reports as well. Thanks a lot.